The red-eye put me on the ground a little after 4 in the morning. The airfield was dark except for the tower and the low blue lights along the taxiway. I came out with one canvas bag on my shoulder and nothing else. I had learned a long time ago to travel light. You carry what you can carry, and you leave the rest for people who have not yet learned what a load costs. The rental car smelled like other people's cigarettes. I drove out through the gate town while it was still asleep. Fast food signs half lit, a gas station with one truck at the pump. The kind of small road that runs up to every base in this country. The same road every time, the same closed diner, the same church with the changeable letters out front, spelling something hopeful into an empty parking lot. I have driven 100 of them. They do not change. Only the driver does. I reached the main gate a little past 5. The sentry checked my identification, saw the civilian clothes and the tired face, and waved me through without a second look. That was correct. I was not there yet. Not the way they would need me to be there in a few hours. For now, I was a woman with a bag and an old habit, and the habit was this. I like to walk a building before it knows me. I like to meet a place while it is still telling the truth. I parked in the visitor lot because I did not yet have a right to the other one. I sat a minute with the engine ticking as it cooled. Across the dark grass, the headquarters of the Combat Logistics Battalion stood low and square under a single flag that hung slack in the still air. In a few hours, that lawn would fill. Folding chairs in ranked lines, a band, family in their good clothes, a colonel presiding. The colors would pass from one set of hands to another set of hands, and the second set would be mine. I did not think about that yet. I thought about coffee and about the fact that I had 30 years of mourning behind me and I still could not sleep on a plane. I crossed the grass in the dark and pulled the glass door of the headquarters. It was open, the way headquarters are always open, because there is always someone on duty and the duty never sleeps. Inside, the light was that hard overhead white that makes everyone look worse than they are. The floor was waxed linoleum. It smelled like floor wax and old coffee that had been on the burner too long. There was a glass case against the near wall with the unit colors folded inside it and a row of small brass plaques underneath. The lineage of the thing, the battle streamers, the names of the places the battalion had been. I stopped in front of the case a second. I knew some of those places. One of them I knew in my hands. The building was doing what buildings do before dawn, which is almost nothing, and I stood in the almost nothing and let it settle over me. A window unit cycled on somewhere down the passage and cycled off again. A clock on the wall ran a second or two fast, the way every clock in every headquarters I have ever served in runs a little fast, as if the whole institution is quietly trying to get ahead of the day. I have spent my life in buildings like this one. I could have told you where the arms room was without being shown. I could have found the ready room and the map board and the place where the coffee is worse than the coffee anywhere else on earth because someone made it at midnight and no one has had the heart to pour it out. There is a sameness to these places that I find, against all reason, comforting. The Marine Corps builds the same building over and over so that a woman who has moved a dozen times in 25 years can walk into a strange one in the dark and already be home. I was home. The corporal at the desk did not know that yet. I did not need him to. A place like that one has a way of telling you who it is if you give it 30 seconds of silence. The mop bucket parked outside a door meant someone took the floor seriously. The awards on the wall, straight and dusted, meant someone took the history seriously. The coffee left on the burner meant someone had been up all night and had not yet been relieved, and a unit that relieves its people on time is a different unit than one that does not. I read all of it the way I have learned to read a room in the first breath, and it told me a battalion that was mostly right and a little tired, which is most of the battalions there are, and which is a fine thing to be handed on a Tuesday. I set that away to think about later. I was not there to inspect. I was there to be nobody for one more hour and then to be somebody, and I wanted the nobody hour first, because it is the only true reconnaissance a commander ever gets of her own command. Once they know your rank, they arrange themselves for you. They square the corners you might look at. The floor gets mopped again. That is not lying exactly. It is only the natural thing a good unit does when the boss is coming, and it means the boss never sees the thing as it actually is. I wanted to see it as it actually was, so I walked slow and I read the walls, and I let the building be honest with me while it still thought I was no one worth performing for. The duty desk was to the right. A corporal sat behind it, young, squared away, spine straight, the kind of young Marine who has decided that being certain is the same as being right. His name tape said Boyd. He had a clipboard and a phone and a coffee and the particular alertness of a man who has been up since before dawn and has decided the building is his to guard. He was doing his job. I want that on the record before anything else. He was doing his job. He was just doing it the wrong way, and he did not yet know there was a wrong way. He saw me come off the glass case and move toward the passage that ran back into the building. He stood up. He came out from behind the desk and put himself in my path. Not aggressive, just there, the way you step in front of anyone who does not read to you as belonging. "Ma'am," he said, "you don't belong here. This is a command post. Family Services is across the street." I had carried heavier things than that sentence. I set the bag down and let him finish. "I'm going to need you to head back over there. If you're looking for somebody, they can help you find them. This building's restricted." Behind him, another Marine at a smaller desk glanced up. A lance corporal, a young woman, her name tape said Salazar. She looked at me, then at the corporal, and something moved across her face that she did not yet have the rank or the years to name. Unease. The animal part of her that keeps score, even when the thinking part has not caught up. She looked back down at her log. I gave the corporal my name. Just the last name, level, the way you give it at a gate. I did not lean on it. I did not say anything after it. I have learned that a name laid down flat, with nothing behind it, tells you a great deal about the person who hears it. He did not check it against anything. There was a board on the wall behind him with the day's postings on it, and my name was on that board in black letters. And he did not turn around. He did not need to, in his mind. He had already decided who I was. A lost spouse, a confused civilian, a woman with a bag. "Ma'am, I hear you," he said, "but I'm going to need you to step back outside. Okay? Let's step outside." He put his hand up, palm toward me, and he waved it. A small motion, back toward the door, back toward the lot, the way you wave a car out of a space it should not be in. I did not argue. I have watched people wave me off my whole life, and I have learned there is nothing at the bottom of an argument you win with a stranger at a desk. So I bent to pick up the bag. Behind him, the sergeant major came down the passage. He was a big man in his early 50s, gray at the temples, moving with the flat, unhurried economy of someone who has walked the same halls for 30 years and does not waste a step. His name was Hutchins. He was not looking at me. He was looking at nothing in particular, the way you do at that hour, and out of pure habit, the way a man checks a mirror he has checked 10,000 times. He stopped at the duty board and read it. The sergeant major read the board the way you read a road you have driven before. Fast, easy, half awake. Then he stopped reading. He read one line again. He went still. I picked up the bag. I did not raise my voice. I did not say the thing that the corporal's whole morning was about to become. The stillness behind him was louder than anything I could have said. I have been in rooms where a shell landed and did not go off, and everyone in the room understood, before any word, that the next few seconds would decide everything. This was quieter than that. But it was the same kind of quiet, and I knew it the moment it arrived. I want to pull back a moment because you have now watched a young man wave a woman out of a building, and it would be easy to think this is a story about him. It is not, mostly. It is about the woman with the bag, and I would like you to understand her before the room does, because the room is about to understand her all at once, and all at once is not understanding. It is only surprise. I came early on purpose. I want that clear. Nobody sent me at that hour. Nobody was expecting the incoming commander until much later, in service uniform, with a driver, the way it is normally done. I came in the dark, in civilian clothes, alone, because I have always wanted to meet a building before it meets the colonel. A room tells the truth when it does not know you are listening. It shows you how it treats the person it thinks does not matter. That is the only honest information you will ever get about a place, and you only get it once, and you only get it if you arrive as a nobody. So I let myself be a nobody. That was not an accident that happened to me. It was a thing I did on purpose, the way I have done it at every command I ever walked into. I sat on the bench in the foyer and I waited, because waiting is not defeat. People think waiting is losing. It is not. I have spent whole nights waiting for a road to be cleared, for a bird to come in, for a boy to stop breathing, and I have learned that the person who can wait without letting it eat them is holding a kind of power the impatient never touch. I sat on the bench and I watched the building wake up. A staff sergeant came in with a box of folders and a travel mug and did not notice me at all. A gunnery sergeant went by with 2 cups of coffee and did not spill either one. The building filled slowly with the sounds a building makes when the day starts. Keyboards, the copier warming up. A radio somewhere turned low. the murmur of people who have worked together long enough to talk in half sentences. I have loved that sound my whole adult life. It is the sound of a thing that works. The Lance Corporal, Salazar, came over after a while. She did not say anything to me. She set a paper cup of the burnt coffee down on the bench beside me, careful, not meeting my eyes, and she went back to her desk. She could not have told you why she did it. Something in the way I sat, maybe. Something in the fact that I had not made a scene when I had every ordinary reason to. Young Marines are better readers than they know. Their instincts run ahead of their rank. She read something true about me before anyone had told her a single fact, and she brought me a cup of coffee, and that small kindness told me more about the future of that battalion than any brief I would get all week. You learn a unit through its lance corporals. They have not yet learned to hide. Everything a battalion is going to become is already sitting in its lance corporals, in the way they treat a stranger before anyone tells them who the stranger is, and I had my answer before the sun was up. There was at least one Marine in that building who brought coffee to a tired woman for no reason but that she looked like she needed it. That is a good place to start from. You can build a great deal on top of one person like that. I want to be honest that most of what I know about leading I did not learn in the schools they sent me to, and they sent me to good ones. I learned it waiting. I learned it on benches and in motor pools and in the back of aircraft. In all the hours, the job is mostly ours, watching how people behave when nothing is happening, because how a person behaves when nothing is happening is exactly how they will behave when everything is. The Marine who cuts a corner on a slow Tuesday will cut the same corner on the worst day of the deployment, and the corner will be a chain that was not checked, and the chain will be the reason a load comes off a truck at speed. It is all one thing, the small honesty and the large one. The person who is decent when it is free is the person who is decent when it is expensive, and there is no way to tell them apart except to watch them when they think the watching has stopped. So I watch. I have made a whole career out of arriving early and watching and being underestimated while I do it, and I have never once regretted the hour I spent being no one. It is the cheapest, truest intelligence there is, and the only cost of it is your pride, and I gave my pride to a road in Helmand a long time ago and have not missed it since. I held the cup, and I did not drink it right away. I looked at my hands around it. They are not young hands. There is a scar across the back of the left one that I do not talk about. In my pocket, I had a coin, a challenge coin, worn so smooth over the years that you can barely read what is stamped on it anymore. I have carried it for 15 years. I turned it over once in my pocket with my thumb and put it away. I do that sometimes without deciding to. My thumb goes looking for it the way a tongue goes looking for a missing tooth. Here's the rule I made a long time ago, and it is the reason I let the corporal wave me toward the door instead of stopping him with 2 words. Rank is a tool, not a shield. You reach for it last. If you reach for it first, you never find out who a person is when they think no one is watching. And who a person is when they think no one is watching is the only thing about them that will ever matter to you when it counts. I have handed rank to a 19-year-old on a bad night and watched him become taller than his fear. I have also watched people put rank on like armor at the first cold wind and never take it off, and become small and hard and useless behind it. I decided early which of those I would be. I decided to keep the tool in my pocket next to the coin and only take it out when the work required it. The work had not required it yet. A corporal had made a bad call about a stranger. That is not a thing you need rank to survive. That is a thing you survive by being a grown woman who has survived worse before breakfast. So I sat on the bench with the coffee a young Marine had brought me for no reason she could name, and I waited for the building to become what it was going to become, and I let it be itself a little longer. Whatever the coin in my pocket had cost me, and it had cost me everything a thing can cost, it had also bought me this. The patience to sit still while a room decided I was no one. The patience to let the truth arrive on its own schedule, instead of dragging it out of a frightened corporal by the collar. I have buried the impatient version of myself a long way back down the road. She did not survive the thing I am about to tell you. I keep my rank in my pocket because of a road in Helmand Province in the year 2011, and I will tell you about that road now, because you cannot understand why I did not flinch in that foyer unless you understand what taught me not to flinch. I was 28 years old. A sergeant. It was a resupply run, the kind we did all the time, the kind that is boring right up until it is the worst day of your life. Fuel and water and ammunition and mail, a column of vehicles strung out on a dirt road between one patch of nowhere and another, in heat that sat on you like a hand. I knew the load plan by heart. I had checked the trucks myself before dawn, walked the whole column with a red lens flashlight in my teeth, put my hands on the chains and the straps, because a load you did not check yourself is a load you are trusting a stranger with, and the road does not forgive that. I rode near the middle of the column, with the radio, listening to the traffic, watching the ground the way you learn to watch it, reading the road for the places where a road stops being a road and becomes a decision somebody made about where to hurt you. A culvert, a patch of fresh dirt, a pile of rocks that is a little too much like a marker. You learn to feel the wrongness before you can name it, and I felt it that morning, low in the stomach, and I keyed the net to say slow it down, and the lead vehicle took the blast before the words were all the way out of me. You do not hear it the way movies teach you to hear it. You feel it in the floor of your own truck first, a hard flat shove up through the seat, and then the sound arrives, and then the dust, a wall of it, the whole world gone the color of a brown blanket. The lead vehicle was off the road and burning. The convoy commander had been up front. The radio told me in about 4 seconds what the dust took another minute to confirm. He was hit. The man whose job it was to make the next decision could not make it. And then the small arms started. From the high ground on the right, the flat tearing sound of it. Rounds walking across the hoods and the doors, and somewhere a young voice was calling for a corpsman before the corpsman even knew who needed him. A voice came over the net. It was Gunnery Sergeant Leon Ackerman, 3 trucks up, close to the front. He was a hard, dry, unexcitable man, 10 years older than me, the kind of Marine who had seen enough that his voice did not climb even when it should have. "Sergeant," he said, "we've got no one up front." So I went up front. I want to be honest about what that was, because people hear a story like this and they put a shine on it that it does not deserve. It was not courage, not the way you mean it. It was that the road does not wait for the right person. It does not care about your rank or your readiness or whether you feel prepared. The road presents you a situation, and either someone steps into the empty space where the decision is supposed to be, or the whole column dies in it. You do not get to choose the day. You only get to choose what you do inside it. I chose to go up front because the alternative was to sit in the middle of a burning column and let it be somebody else's job, and there was no somebody else. There was me. I got up front, I got the vehicles that could still move into a posture that let them fight and let them shield the ones that could not move. I got fire going back the direction the fire was coming from. I got the wounded consolidated. Ackerman was beside me for most of it, that flat, dry voice calling ranges and telling young Marines what to do with their hands so their hands would not shake. And between the two of us, we turned a slaughter back into a fight, which is all you can ever really do. You cannot make a bad road safe. You can only make yourself expensive to kill. There is a thing that happens to time in a fight that I have never been able to explain to anyone who has not been in one. It goes slow and fast at once. A minute takes an hour, and an hour takes a minute. You are doing 10 things, and each one is very clear and very calm. The radio in one hand, and your voice steady, because a steady voice is a weapon. Telling a 19-year-old to breathe, telling a driver to back it up, telling a gunner where you want his rounds, and all of it feels almost slow, almost easy, while the world tears itself apart around you at a speed you cannot follow. That is the part people get wrong about courage. It is not that you are not afraid. It is that the fear goes somewhere useful, or it goes nowhere at all, and you find out which kind of person you are in the first 10 seconds, and then you are that person for the rest of your life. I found out I was the kind who goes quiet. Some people go loud. Loud can work. But quiet is what my Marines needed that morning, a flat, calm voice coming over the noise telling them the next small thing to do with their hands, because a frightened person cannot think about the whole situation. A frightened person can only do the next small thing, and if you give them the next small thing, one after another, you can walk a terrified 19-year-old all the way through the worst hour of his life and out the other side of it alive. That is most of what leadership is on the worst day. The next small thing, said calmly, over and over, until the day is over. Ackerman knew it too. We did not have to coordinate. We had been on enough roads together that we moved like 2 hands on the same body, him working the front and me working the middle, closing the gap, getting the trucks that could still roll into the ones that could not, pulling the whole broken column back into something that could fight instead of something that could only die. And then there was Okafor. Lance Corporal Danny Okafor was 20 years old. He was on a gun in one of the vehicles that had taken fire, and he had stayed on that gun when staying on it was the worst place in the world to be, because he understood, the way the good ones understand it in their bones, that his gun was the reason some of the others were still alive. He was hit badly. By the time I got to him, he was down, and the front of him was wrong in a way I had seen before and will see behind my eyes for the rest of my life. I picked him up. He was not a big kid, but a person is heavier than you think when the person cannot help you carry them, and I carried him out of the worst of it toward the aid post, and I held the weight all the way in, and it never fully leaves your arms once you have carried it. That is a thing nobody tells you. You put the body down, and your arms keep the weight. 15 years later, my arms still have it. He was talking while I carried him. Not much. His voice was going. "Tell them I stayed on the gun, Sergeant," he said. "Tell them." "I'll tell them," I said. "You stayed on the gun. Everybody's going to know." He did not make it. He died at the aid post, with a corpsman's hands on him and my hand on his arm, and he was 20 years old, and he had a mother somewhere who did not know yet that the worst phone call of her life was already on its way across the ocean toward her. I told them. I have been telling them for 15 years. I told the investigation, and I told the award board, and I told his mother in a living room with a folded flag between us. And I have told every Marine I have ever led, in one way or another, that a 20-year-old named Danny Okafor stayed on his gun so that other people could go home, and that this is the whole of it. This is the entire thing we are for. They pinned a medal on me later, a bronze star with the combat V on it for valor, for taking charge of the convoy and for carrying him. I understand why they do it. A military needs to say out loud that certain things matter, and a medal is how it says it. But I would have traded that ribbon, then and now, without a half second of hesitation, for a 20-year-old to have grown old. For Danny Okafor to be a soft, happy man of 35, somewhere with kids and a truck and a bad back, and no idea that a sergeant once carried him anywhere. I would give all of it back for that. The medal is not a prize. The medal is a receipt for something that can never be repaid. That is the road that taught me not to flinch. After you have carried that, a corporal at a desk waving you toward a parking lot is not something that reaches you. It is not even close. It cannot touch the part of you that has already been to the bottom and come back up carrying someone. Back in the foyer, the ground was already moving, and I had not lifted a finger to move it. The sergeant major finished reading the board. He did not turn around and gasp. He did not point at me. Men like Hutchins do not perform the things they feel, and what he felt in that moment he kept entirely off his face, which is its own kind of discipline, and one I respect more than almost any other. He simply turned from the board and walked to the duty desk, unhurried, and stood at the corner of it and looked down at the corporal, who had gone back to his clipboard, satisfied that he had handled the confused woman with the bag. For a second, nobody in that foyer knew anything was wrong except the sergeant major and me. That is the strange thing about the moment a truth turns over. It does not announce itself. It sits in two people first, and then it spreads, the way cold spreads through water, 1 degree at a time, until the whole thing has changed, and no one can say exactly when. I watched him stand at the corner of that desk, and I knew he had read my name, and I knew he knew who I was, and neither of us moved to hurry it. There is a decision a senior enlisted Marine makes in a moment like that, and he makes it in about a second, and the whole tone of what comes next depends on which way he goes. He can make it loud. He can turn on the corporal and tear the skin off him in front of the whole foyer, which is the fast way, the satisfying way, the way that tells everyone watching that the sergeant major is nobody's fool and the disrespect has been answered. Or he can make it quiet and slow and let the corporal arrive at the truth himself, which is the harder way and the better one, because a man who is torn apart learns only that he was torn apart, and a man who has walked to the edge of a thing and made to look down into it himself learns the thing. I did not know yet which kind of sergeant major I had been given. That was one of the pieces of information I most wanted that morning, more than almost anything else, because the sergeant major is the spine of a battalion, and you can tell more about the health of a unit from 1 minute of watching its senior enlisted Marine handle a small wrong than from a week of reading its reports. So I watched Hutchins the way I had watched everything else in that building, closely, quietly, giving nothing away, and what I saw was a man in no hurry at all. He did not raise his voice. He did not lean in. He stood at the corner of the desk with his hands loose at his sides, and he let the quiet do the first part of the work, and the quiet was already doing it, spreading out from him across the foyer, reaching the lance corporal at her log, reaching the staff sergeant who had come back through with his folders, reaching down the passage to whatever early risers were at their desks with their first coffee. People feel that kind of quiet before they understand it. Their hands slow down, their heads come up, Something in the animal reads a change in the weather and goes still to listen, and one by one the people in that building went still, and none of them yet knew why, and the corporal least of all, because that is the strange mercy and the strange cruelty of it. Boyd was the only person in the foyer who did not feel the ground moving under him, because he was standing at the exact center of the thing that was moving, and the center of a moving thing feels like the only still place there is. He had gone back to his clipboard. He had a log to keep, and a watch to stand, and a confident young man's certainty that the morning's small strangeness was behind him. He did not know that a document 6 feet from his shoulder had already changed his life, and that a large gray patient man was standing at the corner of his desk waiting, without any anger in him at all, to hand him the news. I have thought about that a great deal since, about how the thing that undoes you is so often already true, already written down, already sitting on a board a few feet away, long before anyone says it out loud. The orders were true the moment they were posted. My name had been the top line on that board for weeks. The corporal had walked past it 100 times on 100 shifts and never read past the first word, because he had no reason to, because the future is always sitting in plain sight and we almost never read it until it is standing in front of us in a gray sweater with a canvas bag. That is the whole mechanism of the morning. No one recognized my face. A face can be argued with. A piece of paper cannot. The board did the work no person in that room could have done, without heat, without drama, without any help from me, and all any of us had to do was read what had been true the entire time. "Corporal Boyd," the sergeant major said. "Sergeant Major," Boyd came half out of his chair. "Do me a favor." His voice was low and even. There was nothing in it you could have called anger. That was what made it terrible, if you knew how to listen, and the whole foyer was beginning to learn how to listen. "Read me the top line of the posted orders on the board out loud." Boyd did not understand yet why he was being asked. You could see him decide it was a spot check, a bit of morning discipline, the sergeant major being the sergeant major. That happens. A senior enlisted Marine will make you read a thing aloud to be sure you have read it at all. So he turned to the board with something almost like relief, glad to have a simple task in front of him, glad the strange woman was someone else's problem now. He found the top of the board. He read. "Assumption of command," he said. His voice was fine for the first 3 words. "This headquarters, effective this date, Lieutenant Colonel." And there was the smallest catch, the sound of a man's own reading getting ahead of his understanding, the word arriving in his mouth a half second before the meaning arrived behind it. He stopped. He started the name, and it came apart in the middle. "Claudia. Renner." The foyer had gone quiet. Not silent. Quiet. The copier still ran somewhere. A phone rang twice at a back desk and someone let it ring. Salazar had stopped writing. "Say the last part again," the sergeant major said. Not cruel, almost gentle. "The way you ask a man to look one more time at a thing he needs to see for himself, because you know that if you say it for him, he will never quite believe it, and if he says it himself, he will believe it the rest of his life." "Lieutenant Colonel Claudia Renner," Boyd said, "assumes command." He was still holding the word Renner in his mouth when he turned back around, and his eyes came off the board and found me on the bench, a woman in a gray sweater with a paper cup of coffee balanced on her knee, and I watched him do the arithmetic. I watched it happen behind his eyes. Renner on the board. Renner the name the woman gave at the desk, flat, with nothing behind it. Renner the woman he had put his hand up at and waved toward the lot. He looked at the paper, then at me, then at the paper. I have watched men do that math before. It never gets easier to watch. The color left his face slowly, the way it does when a young person understands a whole thing all at once, and there is no piece of it he can set down. His mouth opened. Nothing came out of it, which was the right amount of things to say. Down the passage, a first lieutenant appeared at a fast walk, drawn by the particular quality of the silence. Frost, the officer of the day, 25 years old, already reading the room and not liking what he read. He did the math faster than Boyd had, because he had more pieces. I saw him land on it. Through all of it, I had still said almost nothing. The reversal of that whole room was done without a single word from me. I had given my name once, flat, at a desk, and the paper did the rest. The sergeant major turned from the desk to me. He straightened. He came to the position of attention, there in the foyer, in front of the corporal and the lance corporal and the lieutenant, and everyone who had drifted to the edges of it, and he held it. He did not come to attention because I made him. He came to attention because the board did. A thing true on paper for weeks had just become true in the room, and a man like Hutchins does not argue with a thing that is true. He was not saluting a woman with a bag. He was saluting the office, the colors in the case, the line of names on the brass plaques. The whole long thing the paper had just placed on my shoulders, whether the room was ready or not. I stood up from the bench. I set the coffee down. I still had not raised my voice one time. And here is where it got dangerous. And I do not mean for the corporal. Because now the room knew, and the room wanted something. A room always wants something once it has been embarrassed on someone's behalf. I could feel the want come up off the floor like heat. The thing every person in that foyer now expected. And, worse, that a good number of them wanted to watch. They wanted me to make the corporal small. They wanted the reversal to complete itself the way it does in the stories people tell each other. The arrogant one brought low, publicly, all the way to the floor. Rank handed me that option for free. That is the thing people who have never held it do not understand. Rank does not make you cruel. It makes cruelty frictionless. There is nothing to stop you. Everyone in that foyer knew exactly what a lieutenant colonel was permitted to do to a corporal who had just waved her out of her own headquarters. So did I. That was the problem. Not that I could not. That I could, and that everyone expected it, and the expecting is a current, and a current will carry you somewhere you did not choose to go if you do not set your feet. The first lieutenant, Frost, was already moving toward that ending. He came up beside me, close, his voice pitched low and hot for my ears. "Ma'am," he said, "I am so sorry. I'll have him relieved and standing tall by noon. This is on me, I'll deal with it." He meant well. He meant it as loyalty, as an apology made of action, the young officer's instinct to fix the insult to his commander by finding a body to lay it on. But I looked at him, and I said nothing yet, and I let his offer hang there in the air unanswered, because the room was watching what I would do with it, and what I did with it would be the first true thing they ever learned about me. The sergeant major had not moved. He waited on my word. He did not fill the silence with his own justice. He had corrected the wrong quietly and completely, and now he stood by and let me be the commander, which is the harder and better thing for a sergeant major to do, and I have never forgotten it. The lance corporal, Salazar, watched from her desk, about to learn what kind of commander her coffee had gone to. And I looked at the corporal. Boyd was 21 years old. Now he stood behind his desk with the color gone out of him, and his whole short career narrowing down to a single point, and I could see him standing inside the belief that it was over, that he had ended himself at a duty desk on a change of command morning, that it was now going to be the story of the corporal who turned away the colonel. It is a terrible place to stand, and he was standing in it, and he was 21. I looked at him, and I did not see an enemy. I saw the lance corporal I used to be. I saw a young person who had made a wrong call out of certainty, which is the only place young people can make wrong calls from, because certainty is all they have been issued yet. And under that, without wanting to, I saw another 20-year-old, on a gun, on a road, who had also been certain, and who had been right, and who had died being right. Certainty is the material the young are made of, and you can either burn it or shape it, and burning it is easy, and shaping it is the entire job. The whole room leaned toward the easy ending. I could feel every person in it leaning. I did not lean with them. I set my feet. I made the decision the way I have made every decision that ever mattered, without spectacle, and about the time it takes to breathe out. Because you decide what kind of command you're going to have in the first 10 minutes of having it, whether you mean to or not. That is the only honest time to decide it. Later you will have advisors and precedent and 1,000 pressures, and your decisions will be careful and managed and half true. But in the first 10 minutes, in a foyer, with a white-faced corporal and a room leaning toward blood, you show yourself what you actually believe, and everyone watching learns it at the same moment you do. I was not going to let the first thing this battalion learned about me be that I would spend a young Marine to soothe my own mourning. "Lieutenant," I said. "Stand down." Frost blinked. "Ma'am." "Stand down," I said again, not harder, just settled. "Nobody's getting relieved this morning." I turned to the desk. Boyd came fully to attention now, braced for it, ready to take whatever was coming because taking it was the only dignity he had left. And that readiness, the way he squared up instead of making an excuse, was the first thing that told me he was worth keeping. The ones who reach for an excuse you let go of, the ones who square up and take it, those you keep. "Corporal Boyd," I said. "Ma'am." "You stopped someone you couldn't place in a building you're responsible for, at an hour when you didn't expect anyone. Look at me. That part was right. I let that sit because he needed to hear that part first, because a lesson that begins by telling a man he is entirely wrong is a lesson he cannot hear. He can only survive. You stopped a stranger. Good. That's the job. Now we work on the rest. The rest is how you stop a stranger. You checked nothing. You decided who I was by looking at me, and you were sure, and you were wrong, and you'd already made your ruling before you turned around to the board 6 feet behind you that had the answer on it. That's the part we fix. Not the stopping, the deciding. Yes, ma'am, he said. His voice was steady, barely. I did not want him afraid of me, and not out of softness. Fear is a bad load plan. It shifts in the turns. A Marine who is afraid of you will tell you what you want to hear, will hide the broken thing instead of reporting it, will freeze at the exact moment you need him to move, because his first thought will be you and not the road. Fear is not a structure. It is a held breath, and you cannot hold a breath forever. I wanted a battalion that could exhale and still stand. Boyd reached down for my bag. It was an instinct, an apology made of a small service, the desire to do one right thing after a wrong one. He got a hand on the strap. I've got it, I said, and I picked it up myself. That was not a rebuke, and he needed to understand that too. It was the command tone being set without a speech. I carry my own weight. I always have. I will not hand you my bag to make you feel better about a mistake, and I will not carry yours to make you dependent on me. Everyone carries their own weight in a command that is going to survive contact, and the commander carries hers first, so no one can ever say she asked for a thing she would not do. I put the bag back on my shoulder where it had been at 4 a.m. at a dark airfield, and the weight of it was exactly the same, and I was exactly the same person, and the only thing that had changed was that the room finally knew it. I walked past the desk and into the passage, into the building that was now mine, and I left the corporal standing his post. I did not have him replaced for the ceremony. I did not have him hidden in a back office. I let him keep the desk. The ceremony was at 10 a.m. on the parade deck behind the headquarters, and it went the way those things go, which is to say it went perfectly. The Marine Corps has been doing this exact thing a very long time and has removed all the accident from it. I was in service uniform now. The collar had rank on it, the chest had the ribbons, including the one I would trade. I looked, at last, like the thing the paper said I was, and I stood at the edge of the formation and looked at the battalion drawn up in ranks on the deck, hundreds of Marines standing still in the sun, and I thought about the fact that an hour and a half earlier, I could not get past the duty desk of the same organization, and now the whole of it was standing at attention because I was about to walk to the center of it. Both of those things were true. The waved-off woman with the bag and the commander the battalion stood for, same person. I have learned to hold 2 true things at once without needing one of them to cancel the other. Most of the pain I have watched people carry comes from the belief that only one thing can be true. Truth is not a single note. It is a chord, and you learn to hear all of it at once, and the day you can do that is the day you stop being at war with your own life. Colonel Vance presided. Miriam Vance, the regimental commander, a lean and exact woman of 49 with a voice built for a parade deck, who had, I found out later, heard the whole story of the foyer before noon and said nothing to me about it, because she understood it was mine to handle. She ran the ceremony straight and clean. The outgoing commander, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Vale, stood beside me, 45 and tired in the particular way of a man handing off a thing he has carried well for 2 years, relieved and grieving at once. He relinquished command. He passed the colors to the sergeant major, and the sergeant major, Hutchins, the same man who 8 hours earlier had gone still at a duty board in the dark, carried the colors across the small distance between the outgoing commander and me, and he passed them into my hands. The colors are heavy in a way that has nothing to do with weight. It is the staff and the flag and the streamers with the names of the places on them, one of which I have carried in my arms in a form that was not cloth. Hutchins put the staff in my hands, and for 1 second his eyes met mine, and there was the whole morning in that second, the board, and the stillness, and the corporal and the quiet, and neither of us said a word about any of it. Some things are understood better in silence. Colonel Renner assumes command, Colonel Vance said, and the formation I had been waved away from at 0645 stood at attention for me at 1000, and the flag was in my hands, and I held still, and the battalion held still, and the 2 true things stood next to each other in the sun and did not cancel out. I gave remarks. They were short. Nobody remembers a long speech anyway. They remember whether you talked about yourself, So I did not talk about myself. I named the road. I named the thing we are for. And I said one thing I had decided to say on the drive in before any of the mourning happened, and the mourning had only made it truer. I have been the stranger nobody could place, I told them. More than once. I was one this morning in that building in front of some of you. So hear me on this. Treat every single person who walks up to you like they might be the one you answer to. Not because they might be. Some of them will be, and you will not know it, and that is not the reason. The reason is that it is who we are. We do not decide a person's worth by looking at them. We are the people who give the stranger a chair. That is the standard. It does not move. I did not mention the corporal. I did not name him. I did not look at him. I did not gesture at the desk. I did not have to. He was standing in the formation in front of me, in his place in the ranks, and he heard every word, and every word had his mourning in it, and the fact that I did not point at him was itself the entire lesson. A lesson you can survive is a lesson that can change you. A lesson delivered by public execution only teaches a man to hate the executioner. Afterward, on the deck, in the loose milling that follows a ceremony, the weight moved through the people the way it should, softly, and landed where it belonged. Boyd came to find me. He had every reason to keep his head down, and instead he walked up, in front of people, and asked to speak to me, still half expecting the axe. "Ma'am," he said, "permission to ask you something." "Go ahead, Corporal." "Why didn't you just tell me who you were?" There was no anger in it, just a young man trying to understand what had happened to him. "You could have stopped the whole thing with one sentence. You had the rank the whole time. Why'd you let it go that far?" "Because I wanted to meet you before you met my rank," I said. "That's the only time you ever get to meet a person for real. After the rank walks in, everybody's performing. I wanted to see who was at that desk when he thought nobody who mattered was watching. And you know what I saw? I saw a Marine who guards his building. That's not nothing. That's most of the way there. The rest is just aim. You're going to be all right, Corporal. Better than all right if you want it." He was quiet a second. Then, because the young are brave in ways they get no credit for, he said, "I thought I was done." "You're not done," I said. "You're the opposite of done. I've got a job for you." And I gave him one. Not a punishment. A task. He was going to help stand up the battalion's sponsorship program for arriving Marines and their families. The thing that makes sure the next stranger who walks into that foyer with a bag and a tired face gets met by a hand instead of a wall. He, of every Marine in the battalion, understood in his bones why that program mattered, because he had been the wall once. And a man who has been the wall and felt what it cost is exactly the man you want building the door. He would answer to the sergeant major on it and report to me monthly, and I watched the narrow, dead-end future he had been standing in an hour before open up into something with a road in it. "Ma'am," he said. "Yes, ma'am. I won't let you down." "I know," I said. And I did. He went back to his people, walking taller than he had all day, and I let the deck empty out around me, and that was when a senior enlisted Marine crossed toward me from the far side, in the uniform of a different battalion, older, grayer, moving with a limp he had not had the last time I saw him. I knew him before I could read his name because you do not forget the walk of a man who stood next to you on the worst day of your life. Leon Ackerman, 15 years older than the road, a sergeant major himself now, or nearly, and from another command, on my parade deck on my first day. He stopped in front of me and we looked at each other, and there is a kind of recognition that has nothing to do with a document on a board. It is not given to a rank, it is given to a person, and it is the only kind that has ever mattered to me. "Colonel," he said, and there was a smile way down under the flat, dry voice, the same voice that had said, "We've got no one up front on a burning road" when I was 28. "Still going up front, I see, ma'am." "Somebody has to, Gunny," I said. And he did not correct me on the rank, because between us that was still what he was, the way I would always be sergeant to him where it counted. We did not say much more than that. Two people who had been on that road standing quietly on a parade deck, a long way from it, both of us still carrying a 20-year-old we did not have to name out loud, each knowing the other one was carrying him too. That is the recognition that matters. It is private. It does not come off a board. That night, I sat in my new office with the boxes still unopened and the colors standing in the corner, and I did the harder arithmetic, the one that being right at a duty desk had let me avoid all day. Because being right at the desk was easy. The whole day had been easy, a story with a clean shape you could put a bow on. But a shape is not the same as being whole, and the office at night, with the door closed and no one watching and the building gone quiet around me, is where I do the part of the work that has no shape. I took Alcafer's memorial card out of my things and stood it up on the desk. I have carried it as long as I have carried the coin. It has his photograph on it, a boy in his dress uniform, and his name, and the dates, the second of which is a day in 2011, that I do not have to read because it is written on the inside of me. I keep it where I will see it, because the day I stop seeing it is the day I have let the medal win the argument. They gave me a ribbon for the worst day of my life, and they called it valor. I have thought about that word for 15 years, valor, as if what happened on that road was a virtue I performed instead of a horror I survived. I command a battalion tonight because a 20-year-old, dying, spent one of the last things he had on a sentence. Tell them I stayed on the gun. And I have organized my entire life around keeping that one promise. I did not become a colonel despite that road. I became a colonel because of it. Every good thing in my career grew out of the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I do not get to have the one without the other, and I would still, tonight, give the command back. All of it. To give him the years. I would be a sergeant forever, a civilian, nothing at all. If being nothing meant Danny Okafor got to be a man of 35 with a bad back and no idea I ever existed. That is not a wound I am looking to heal. I am not carrying him because I am broken. I am carrying him because I promised, and a promise you keep only while it is easy is not a promise, it is a preference. He asked me to tell them. I have been telling them for 15 years, and I will tell them until I cannot speak. Telling them is not my injury, it is my discipline. It is the most intact thing about me. I took the coin out of my pocket, the worn one, the one I turn over with my thumb, and set it on the desk beside the card. His unit gave it to me after, at the memorial, a small brass thing that has ridden in my pocket for 15 years, rubbed smooth by all the times my hand went looking for it without asking me first. The two of them sat there together on the desk in the lamplight, the card and the coin, and I looked at them a while, and I was not celebrating anything. A day that looks like a victory from the outside was, on the inside, in that office, a night of keeping a promise. I was not toasting the woman who held the flag. I was sitting with the boy who did not get to. The command settled, over the weeks, into the shape a command takes, and the people settled into the places the truth had put them. I did not forgive everyone with a hug, and I did not destroy anyone with a word. That is a false choice. Stories like to offer, and life almost never does. What actually happens, if you do it right, is quieter. The truth is usually not dramatic, only accurate, and accurate is enough. Boyd stayed on the desk. I want you to notice that, because it is the whole point. I did not move him to hide him, and I did not move him to punish him. I left him exactly where he had been standing when he got it wrong, because the desk was where he was going to get it right. Over and over, until it was simply who he was. And one morning a few weeks in, walking through the foyer early the way I still do, because I have not stopped being the woman who likes to meet the building before it meets the colonel, I watched him greet an arriving family, a young Marine, a spouse, a car seat, a mountain of luggage. I watched Boyd come out from behind his desk, not to stop them, to help them. He got the spouse a chair and the young Marine a cup of the terrible coffee. He found out their name and made a call to get someone from their new unit down to meet them. So the first face they saw in their new life was not a wall, but a hand. He did not see me watching. That is what made it real. He was doing it the right way when he thought no one who grades him was in the room, which is the only time doing it right ever counts, given back to me by the man who had failed the same test the first time. He glanced up toward my office, once, out of a habit he did not know he had yet, the way you glance toward the thing you are becoming. I was not at the window. He did not need me to see it. That was the point. I did not fix the corporal. I want to be precise, because people love to take credit for other people's growth, and it is a form of theft. I did not fix him. I gave him a road and got out of the way. The good ones drive it themselves. All you can do is decline to run them off the road when they are young and certain and wrong, and then let them find out what they are made of on their own weight. He drove it himself. I only declined to end him before he got the chance. At the end of one long day, weeks in, the sergeant major and I stood in the foyer with the building quiet again around us, everyone gone home, just the two of us in the glass case with the colors in it. Rough one, he said. It had been. A supply problem, a personnel mess, the ordinary grinding trouble of running a battalion. They're all going to be rough ones, I said. That's the job. Yes, ma'am. And then after a moment, because Hutchins is a man who says the important thing exactly once and never again, for what it's worth, the way you handled that first morning, the corporal. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. I know, I said. For what it's worth. Thank you for going still at the board instead of loud. You gave me the room to do it right. He nodded once, and we stood there a while longer, and the command I had walked into at 0645, the one that had waved me toward the parking lot, had become, quietly, over weeks, without a single loud day, the command I had wanted. The stranger, nobody could place, now signed the orders everyone in that building read off the board every morning. I did not lose the lesson of the first morning by becoming the commander. I built the whole command on it. So here is what I want to say to you, whoever you are, wherever you are hearing this. If you have ever walked into a room that turned out to be yours and been waved toward the door before you got 3 steps into it, I know something about how that feels, and I am telling you it is survivable, and more than survivable. If someone has already decided who you are before they have bothered to learn your name, if they have looked at you and been certain and been wrong, if they have put a hand up and pointed you toward the parking lot of your own life, then let me tell you the one thing a road in a far country and a morning in a quiet foyer taught me. And it is this: let them. Let them be wrong about you. You do not have to correct every person who misjudges you in the moment they misjudge you. You do not have to reach for your rank, whatever your rank is, the degree, the title, the record, the receipts, the proof, and slap it down on the desk to make a stranger respect you. That is not strength. That is only noise, and noise is what frightened people make. The truth about who you are does not need your help, and it does not need your anger. It will arrive on its own. It always does. It arrives quietly, on a piece of paper, in a moment you did not stage, and it does the work that no amount of arguing could ever have done, and it does it better because you kept your hands off it. So carry your own weight. Keep your promises, especially the ones nobody is checking on, especially the ones made to people who cannot hold you to them anymore. And when the truth finally does arrive and the room turns and everyone leans toward the easy ending where you get to make small the person who made you small, do not lean with them. Be the one who sets her feet. Be the kind of person who gives the stranger a chair, even the stranger who is one morning a wall to you. That is the whole command. It is also the whole life. And if you can do that, if you can wait and carry and keep and give the chair, then it will not matter in the end who waved you toward the door. It never really did. You were always the name on the board. You only had to walk in early and be who you already were, and let the morning become what it was always going to become.